Well, here I am back again today. And I said that I'd talk about how I met my wife and what kept us together all these years. And yes, we've been married uh, 61 years. Actually, it's 61 and a half years plus. And no regrets. If I had to do all over again today, I'd sure want to marry the same person I did back then. And we went together for a couple of years before we actually got married. And part of that time I was in the military. Um, I actually come back halfway through my military tour and got married. We had planned it out way ahead of time and saved and did what we had to do so that could happen. And I had it cleared through the military so I could do that. Had all the proper paperwork. In case you don't know, back in those days when you signed up for the military, you actually gave them full control of you and your body. You belonged to the government till your time was up. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I love that word. My wife and I were in our teens when we met each other. And a friend of mine and I were driving down the street. We were in his car. It was back when I was 16. And there was two girls walking down the street. And he knew one of them. He wasn't sure about the other one, but he kind of figured that they were sisters because he knew the one and knew if she had a sister. He just didn't know if that was who it was down there, the second girl. And he said, well, let's stop and talk to him. Well, I'll introduce you. I said, okay. So he stops, and my wife was a year, a little over a year difference between her sister and her, a year and a half, I guess. And I was exactly the same age as her sister. And actually knew her sister from school because we had some of the same classes. And I never paid any attention to her, but today was the first time I'd ever seen that girl that was walking with her, which happened to be her sister. And I was awestruck. I was tongue-tied. She was really extremely cute. She would stand out in any crowd. And she had these big, gorgeous brown eyes that just melted your soul. And she had me from the first glance. But she didn't think much of me. You see, I had my hair was combed back into a DA, and it had, hair hanging, probably out into here, curly. And it was pretty curly on top, and it wasn't because I curled my hair. I didn't do that stuff. I had my Brill cream in there, a little dab will do you. I don't know if you ever heard that. A little dab will do you. Yeah, so every morning, part of my prep work after I got cleaned up was put a little dab of Brill cream in my hair and fix it up, and usually stay that way most of the day. And like everybody else, I carried a comb in my pocket to primp. But anyway, besides that, I used to wear this black leather jacket, and it had my name on it, and a few inscriptions that weren't all necessarily that nice, but after all, I was kind of a standout, stand on my own 2 feet, and a dare you to knock the chip off my shoulder. Smart aleck. But a lot of the kids my age were, including a friend of mine that was introducing me to the two girls. So time goes along, and of course, the little talk I had with her out on the street, she wasn't about to fall for anything I had to say. And when I asked her if she'd go out on a date, she said no. And the hell is it? No. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, gee whiz, prettiest girl I've seen, and she won't go out with me. And I asked around about her since I didn't know her. And it so happened that back then you could work at different stores or things like that, and it helped you with your school. And I was given the title of assistant manager of a theater, where they show. It was a show where you put on movies, a movie show. And I was learning the ropes. I figured out taxes and with gate receipts. I took tickets. I managed the people at the counter. Really, I kind of a gopher more than anything else. Sometimes I had to check. I had to help get the film lined up. Back then, you had to cut and dice and splice film, great big rolls of film. And the cameras looked like a big welder. You had to adjust the brightness. Anyway, she used to come up there and go to the show every once in a while. One day she left her purse on the counter. And I seen her do it. Of course, every time she came in, I tried to flirt with her, and she just ignored me. But when she left her purse up there, I just took the purse and put it behind the counter, and I told the girl up there, I said, when she comes to retrieve this, just tell her nobody's turned it in yet, but if she wants to stick around, she would have me go down there, and we'd turn the lights on and go look for it, because maybe she lost it down by where she was sitting. And when the movie was over, of course, I was all primed to show her wherever it was, and we walked down there, and I give her my best side of me that I had. And of course, when I worked there, I had a tie and a white shirt, dress pants, and sometimes I wore a sport jacket or something in there. We had to dress for the occasion whenever we worked there. And when we come back up to the front, I took her purse and I said, well, here it is, and handed it to her. It's a little clutch purse. And she thanked me for it. And I said, would you consider going out with me? And she said, okay, I'll do that. And our first date, I used to be able to get free tickets to all the theaters in the area. We lived not too far from a bigger town, and it had a lot of theaters. But there was also a drive-in not too far from, actually it wasn't too far from where her house was. So I told her I'd take her there, and she said fine. And she called me up and said that she was going to have to babysit for her sister. And I said, well, we'll take your sister with us then, not a big deal. And I had access to enough passes. It really wasn't a big deal. So we went to the drive-in, and that day first date wasn't the greatest in the world. Her sister would whine. She'd, ow! She drove me nuts. Her sister did. Her sister was only 6 years old, so she was spoiled rotten, baby of the family. So pretty soon she said, I want to go home. And that boy, that sure ruined my day or evening. Anyway, I said, okay, let's get this on the road. So I took her home, and her sister jumped out of the car and ran in the house, and she thanked me for taking her to the theater, or the drive-in theater. And I said, well, listen, how about going out again? She said, okay. And I guess by then she liked me. I was on my best behavior. I didn't have my black coat on, and I didn't get smart alecky with her or anybody else. I acted the gentleman. I knew how to be a gentleman. And so she was somewhat impressed. Whoops, there I go again. I forget to lock this thing in. But anyway, after that, it wasn't too long, a few more months, and I turned 17, and I was only halfway. I'd quit my junior year halfway through, and I was going to have to take my junior year over. And I decided I was going to go in the service instead, and that's what I did. 2 weeks after I turned 17, I was in boot camp, and she stuck with me. We had a friendship ring, and things worked out well. I wrote her on a regular basis. Every couple of days, I sent a letter. She came down with my parents to see me when I was halfway through boot camp, and we really got along fine. And I went after I had to go back, obviously, after you get a break between boot camp and when you go to school, because you have to take a schooling to complete your MOS, and that's what you're going to do the rest of the time you're in service. Whatever your duty is going to be. As it was for me, it was going to be a mechanic, a truck mechanic. When I went back to school, I picked up an engagement ring, bought it, and at Christmas time I asked her if she would accept an engagement ring, and she said yes. And I was pretty happy. But I got shipped overseas very shortly after that. And I didn't know if it would last or not because, a lot of people receive Dear Johns when they're in the service. And it breaks their heart. It really changes. I seen quite a few get Dear Johns before I ever went overseas. When I was in boot camp and when I was taking the schooling, you could tell when a guy got a letter from home, a Dear John letter. And it takes the stuffings out of you because really the only thing you have is, well, they tear you down in the service initially. So the only thing you have is the memories from back home and your girlfriend, if any. And when you go overseas, it happens a lot. And because people, after a year or so, life goes on. The girl back home, somebody knows that you're in the service and they start hitting on her. And they go their way and you go your way. That's life. But with me and my future wife, that's not the way it happened. We fell deeper and deeper in love, if that's possible, because we were completely enveloped in each other. So after I'd been over there for a year, I had a 30-day leave coming, and I flew home. And we'd already pre-planned to get married while I was home. And that's what we did. We got married. And obviously, my first son was born about 9 months later. And I was back overseas when I didn't get to watch him being born. But I did come home 3 months later after he was born, and we went out to the West Coast. And I had contemplated staying in, but I didn't want to have to go back overseas. And I would have had to go back overseas. I was in the 4th Infantry, and their next assignment was Vietnam. And I had one boy that was just over a year old, and another baby on the way. And I told them I had thought about re-enlisting, but if I could stay in the States till this next baby was born and I could get my wife settled. And they said that wouldn't be possible because I was in the 4th Infantry and it was being shipped overseas and I was going to be part of the group going. I said, well, I guess I won't be re-enlisting. So when my time was up, my wife and I left the West Coast and went home. And we went through several jobs, and I went back to school. And when I was going to school, I pressed clothes at night and all the things you have to do to get by. It was a tough time that first couple of years out of the military. And finally, after things stabilized, and by then we had 2 boys and a set of twins when things really got stabilized. And it was rough on her because a lot of diapers. Back then, you didn't see paper diapers, so that meant, we wore out a couple washing machines washing diapers, I can tell you. And when you have twins, it's continuous. It's either feed time or change time, one of the two. And then life goes on. I created my own business. I actually had a partner at that time. And I bought my partner out and maintained it myself. We moved to an area where there was more populace and tried to grow the company, and in fact was able to do that. And then the Carter years come along and broke us. And I found a bigger, better company that was willing to pay me as much as I'd already been made, or I was making as when I was in business. And I couldn't turn it down. I couldn't turn it down no matter what, because my business was failing. During the Carter years, things were, first it went flat and then it went in the dump. And large factories in the area just collapsed. It was a devastating time. Through all these thin times, my wife never blamed me for any of the problems, even though the finances were really down to just about nothing. The company I went to work for healed our debts and put us in the race to get somewhere else, I guess you might say. I loved working for that company. And along the way, I ended up working for several companies before I retired. And all that time, with the kids leaving the house, and there's a transition when each one leaves. There's an empty spot, but we made it through all those. We just did. And my wife was a coupon saver, and tried to put nickels away when we only had pennies to spend. She got us pretty well, what you call comfortable, through her being tight with about everything she could figure out. And I love her for it. She had a good insight into what was going to take for us to get to the next phase. But throughout all this, we never doubted the love for each other. We just went on with life. Partway through the life, the doctor had told me that I had about 5 years left due to a disease called COPD, and that I was going to need a heart-lung transplant within 5 years. And I was just into my 50s when that happened. And I felt rough at the time, and at that time I had pneumonia and bronchitis. And I already had sleep apnea, and I was in bad shape. Couldn't hardly move. And because I was so sick, I was losing weight. I lost about 40 or 50 pounds, and it didn't help any. And I was in a bad state of mind, and my wife stood with me, and got me through that period of just a downward spin mentally. And the company did everything they could to make my life as comfortable as possible and kept me on the payroll. And it was hard for me to do anything. But they did it anyway. And they doubled my life insurance in case something would happen, because I was worried, was I going to have enough money when I passed away that my wife could make it. Well, they put that worry away with insurance. Two pay increases that year. big pay increases. Bonus increases, more frequent. I put every nickel away from all that extra money that came in because I knew we had to put enough away so if something did happen, my wife could be comfortable and wouldn't need an income. She was not going to have to go to work and work some menial job to live in poverty row. We were able to pay off our house, and we had, in fact, not too long after that, we bought the house where we're at now, and we paid it off. And then we bought another house to keep us busy because then I went and retired. And all this time hanging over me was, I was thinking I was going to die. And they said, well, your lungs aren't healing, but you're getting better use out of what you got. You see, I went out and exercised. I bought a bike. I rode it every night. I did everything I can to get my body accumulated to less oxygen, but still let me have some sort of life. Now, I haven't been able to run since I was 40, 45 years old, 50 maybe. 50 was the last time I could do any running. So, playing sports like basketball and baseball and softball and all that, I left by the wayside years ago. But my wife and I figured out other things we could do. It was take trips and all the things we wanted. And we've seen most of the United States. We've had a life that some people can only dream about. If I had to do all over again, I wouldn't change it. Even having a debilitating disease as advanced as mine is, if I knew I had to give up everything all the advances I made since I discovered how bad it was, I would live with it. I would say I would live with the disease. If that was the only burden I had to carry was that disease, to enjoy the life I've had in the last 30 years, well, so be it. That's fine. Everybody has to carry some sort of a cross. You have a cross to bear. The good Lord seemed fit to show me the path to get around these problems, and blessed me with a partner that I could have never found anywhere. She had to be a gift. She was meant for me, and I hope I was meant for her. She gave up a lot of things, I think, so that I could do the things that I had to, no matter where I worked or how little or how much money I made. It was always okay. We were lucky enough. We had 4 fine children, healthy when they were born. One of our children, my youngest boy, passed away. He was about 40. And his heart gave out and he was gone. That happens sometimes. I still have my oldest boy and the twin girls. And so many grandchildren that it's hard to just sit down and name them all. And great-grandchildren. So you think I haven't had a blessed life? I have. I thank you so much for listening to this story, and I hope you have a partner that makes you happy and makes you where you're at today, and that through all the sicknesses or ups and downs stuck by you like glue. In today's world, it's hard for 2 people to get through a crisis and stay together. It's very hard. And financial crisis is one of the hardest ones. And we've been up and down the scale multiple times. When I had my own business, I was on the fast track to being a millionaire back then. And there wasn't anything I couldn't have or get. I could make a phone call and the banker would say the money will be in the bank when you go ahead and write a check. And there wasn't much of a limit on the amounts that I could spend. The company I worked for, I used to have to handle checks that were around $1 million. I did a lot of collections for them. A lot of people working for me, big payrolls, things like that. So money was always there. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. I never worried about because somebody else had more than I did. You know, obviously, when you look at a company and they're taking in $1 billion, and you're playing with 100,000, you're you're looking at the two things, and sometimes it bothers people. But for me, I was born so poor that if I had 2 nickels in my pocket and they jingled, that was more than enough. You see, a nickel would buy a roll, and I love cherry rolls. And I would buy one once in a while. And a nickel would buy a bottle, or a bottle of pop, a big bottle. So, you know, you were very rich with 2 nickels in your pocket. And even a couple pennies would buy a piece of candy. Oh, I don't know. If I had to do all over, would I do it? Yes. My wife and I, we get together about everything. You know what one of our best times of our day is? I know you may not believe it, but we have a dishwasher. And my wife will fill up the dishwasher, but there's quite a few things that need to be washed by hand. And she washes them and I dry them. And during that time, that's when we talk about the different activities of the day and what we're going to do tomorrow or sometime in the future or something that comes to mind. It is a time we've been doing this for years. And it's probably one of the most wonderful times of the day you can have. And if you don't believe me, the next time your spouse is out there washing dishes, because there's things you can't put in a dishwasher, I'm telling you. Or find something that you can do with your wife, your spouse, during the day. Make a ritual out of it and see if you don't enjoy it. Because that's part of marriage. Having some time together. It's as important as to having some private space. You need private space there are times. But the time together is just as important. It makes you tighter, grows you together better than anything else. And you can talk things out. It's very comfortable, a very relaxed time. And if you're washing dishes, that's one of the most boring things in the world. So you're glad to have somebody to talk to you while you're doing that. That's just a simple tip. That helps us about as much as anything. And I love to go out there and help her. For one thing, we can talk about anything while we're doing that. And it's not a competition. We have never had an argument while we were washing dishes. We have arguments about other things, but that's not time. So with that, listen, I hope you have found that special person like I did. I was lucky. And yes, I could have 1,000 stories of our marriage along the way. But they would bore you to death because they have meanings to my wife and I, but they would have probably no meanings to you. And it's not that you're not welcome to that part. It's, you know, people, they look at you and say, well, are you really happy and all that? Yeah, I really am. I want you to believe that. We haven't had those kind of fights over all those years where you'd want to get in a rough and tumble type thing. No physical activity that way. Our fights were verbal and forgiven, usually before we went to bed. It's hard to sleep when you're mad at somebody. But no, it's been a journey, and I loved it. So I hope you do too. I hope you love your journey with your wife or husband or significant other, whatever you have as a partner. I hope they mean as much to you as my wife has meant to me. And every time we've been sick, the other ones have been there to pick them up. Literally, that's been the way it is. In the last 6 years, we both have had back operations. My wife had an operation where they had to go through here and stabilize her neck, and she's got braces in her neck. She has a knee. You know, they had to take the bone structure out of there and put the implant knee in there. Her hands and arms have been fixed from carpal tunnel. Her feet had been fixed a couple of times where they had straightened the toes out, stuff like that. When she had her neck operation, I had to feed her through a tube for 30 days after we brought her home. She was fed in the hospital that way. The operation paralyzed part of her neck, and she lost the ability to swallow. And until she got that back, she had to have tubes, be fed through a tube. That was quite a process. When I had both back operations, for the first one, I couldn't get around without a walker. The second one, I needed a walker and a wheelchair. And I still have problems from the waist down with my loss of feeling in my legs. It feels like I'm walking in water all the time. But you know, for all the things that happen, I feel pretty good because I can still walk. I very seldom have to use stabilization, whether it be a walker or a cane or anything like that. I walk pretty okay. No running and jumping. I walk with my pup every day, a little bit in the backyard here. So all the things that are worth doing, we do, and most of the time we do them together. She loves to fish, and I do too. So that's our hobby, a real hobby. I used to work on collector cars, and she used to help me. That's why this garage was built. We both have things that we like to do. She loves to do little painting touch-ups. I've been trying to talk her into painting pictures. She used to do that, but she hasn't done that for years. She crochets. She's very good at it. She knits. I mean, I don't know much that she don't do. She makes pies. She makes this vanilla cream pie that melts in your mouth, and she does it all from scratch. No package mixes. And just thinking about it makes my mouth water. She makes cherry pies, chocolate pies. There is very few things that she can't do. Someday I'll try to get in and tell you some of the wonderful meals that this woman fixes. But the problem with it is I'm going to have to be careful. I will caution you because you may get so hungry you're going to run to the refrigerator and get something out of the refrigerator. And that's a truism. I'm going to let you go. And I am going to put another video up. I don't know if I'll do it today or not. I wanted to explain something I heard the other day, yesterday. Boy. Yeah, I don't know if I'll do it today, but we'll see. With that, have a good day. And look, I thank you so much for listening. And if you got to hear, I really thank you because it's just my story. It's a true story. A happy one for me. I don't know how it would be for you, but it is for me a happy time of my life, having that partner that sticks by me. And I would help her under any circumstance. So, with that, I'll see you either later today or tomorrow or the next day, but I'll be back. Thank you very much for listening to me.